So my liberal ideological framework is instructive towards me believing that people should be judged by their actions and not their beliefs. In turn, this means that if someone believes something and they are not acting upon it, then they are not a danger or a threat, because they're not acting upon that belief. Specifically when it comes to violence, or doing violence towards someone else. The only just time to do violence, in my opinion, is in self-defense. So I don't agree that just seeing a neo-Nazi is good enough reason to attack that neo-Nazi, especially as we live in a system of universal values where everyone has human rights, and one of those rights is not to simply be attacked just because of who or what you are. This is not something that the New York Times appears to agree with, and they posted this back in January after Richard Spencer got punched. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? Now, most of this article is justification for punching Nazis. Lots and lots of Twitter verified lefties who are saying, yes, look, it's fantastic. Until you get to a chap called Nick Spencer who has a couple of paragraphs, this is it, of him saying, look, this is a disturbing precedent and it's not going to age well, this is going to cause more problems. And you had many left-wing sites posting things like, Left Hook, a brief history of punching Nazis in America, 40 years of fighting neo-Nazis, Klansmen and assorted white supremacists, as if this is all just a great thing. The lionization of random violence against people who you believe to hold a belief is unacceptable. Just completely unacceptable. In my worldview. But in the worldview of the far left, this is completely acceptable. If they believe that you should kill black people, for example, then they think that eventually they will act on those beliefs. Even if the people who hold these beliefs are so few in number that they will never actually be able to get state-backed violence against black people, or oppression of any sort, really. They think that the very existence of these people is, I don't know, an invitation to others, perhaps, but they're really unpopular. They're really unpopular. I mean, I can't see the general public ever going for any of these beliefs. So what's the problem? It's not like these people are ever going to get any kind of oppressive regime enacted just because they have a distaste of other ethnic groups than white. But we need to treat them like some sort of serious mortal danger, apparently, which they're not. And these are similar publications to the ones who are effectively giving cover to Antifa and their violent tendencies, because that's where this all comes from, an Antifa member punching Richard Spencer, and everyone's saying, well, yes, that Antifa person did nothing wrong. Well, I'm afraid he did, but let's assume he didn't do anything wrong. Why then is this wrong? If there is a good reason to punch a Nazi, wherever you find them, and it's okay for Antifa to do them, and Antifa are a distinctly anti-hierarchical organisation, and feminism is designed to break down the gender differences between men and women, then Antifa would innately be feminist, which is why there are anarcho-feminists, and most Antifa would consider themselves some brand of feminist. There is no reason to treat a woman differently to a man, and if it's okay to punch a man because he is a Nazi, then how exactly are Antifa refuting these campaign posters? They don't have any arguments against the fact that, yes, you should be able to punch Nazi women. And so if these people are actually Nazis, then you should punch these women. So yes, these women should end up looking like something out of a domestic violence campaign. That's the Antifa position on Nazi women, I'm afraid. There's no getting around it. So then we come on to Dan Harmon's I'm not a Nazi rant, in which he says this.
It is so low that the worst people in the world find it, and that's where they rally. And it's so low, we have gotten so bad that a third of our country has gotten there. 29% of the people are fucking Nazis. Let's face it, that's...
Okay, Dan. So then why aren't 29% of the people currently being punched in the face right now? What's the objection? You don't think none of those people are women, do you? So I think we should get punching these female Nazis, don't you, Dan Harmon? I mean, that's your position. That's the Antifa position. This is okay, according to you. If you call this a smear campaign, by what grounds are you calling this a smear campaign? How is this a smear? This is what you believe, apparently. This is how you want your Nazis to look, and it's just unfortunate that reality, as in the human condition, doesn't tend to be very favourable towards punching women regardless of what they believe. This is the logical conclusion of your set of beliefs, and naturally it repulses people. So what does that say about you? Regardless of the fucking Nazis, of which there are in fact a tiny proportion. And the thing is, he doubled down on this on Twitter by mocking Lauren Southern when she pointed out that he said literally a third of the country are Nazis. Sorry, new numbers hadn't come in. Turns out 1% of us are Nazis. No, they're not. No, they're not. 1% of your country are not Nazis. But even then, a percentage of that 1%, let's assume that was true, are going to be women, Dan. Should we punch those women because they're Nazis, Dan? That's your opinion. You are pro-beating Nazis. You are not anti-beating Nazis. So this is for you. This is not a smear campaign if it's actually accurately representing your beliefs, which it is. So maybe, just maybe, you should calm the fuck down. You should realize that the people you are supporting are fucking monstrous, and maybe, just maybe, we should actually, I don't know, get back to talking about real issues and not Nazis, because they're not a real issue. They're the phantom boogeyman of the left. They desperately want them to exist, but in reality, they don't. You've got hardly anyone who would even LARP as a Nazi, let alone actually is a Nazi. I mean, it's just stupid. How much of a voting influence do you think these people have on your country? The answer is almost 0%. Utterly negligible. Beyond measure, because there are simply too few of them to count. I'm sorry, Dan. You have to accept that you are a fucking lunatic. And the worst part is, I love some of Dan Harmon's work. Community was amazing. I love Rick and Morty. It's gutting to me. It's same with Joss Whedon. I used to love Buffy. My God, watching these fucking assholes become total cucks is such a disappointment. But no, there are fucking hardly any Nazis, and if there are Nazis, you don't think it's wrong to punch them. And if some of those Nazis are women, well, what a surprise. The male feminists have found an excuse to abuse women. Imagine my shock. Oh, and as a quick aside, the chap who claims to have been stabbed because he had a neo-Nazi haircut apparently stabbed himself. Just thought I'd leave this in there so there is an update and you are aware that there are liars on both sides. And just as you shouldn't go around stabbing or punching neo-Nazis, don't go around lying about being stabbed by Antifa. Lying about them doesn't really help, and to be honest with you, that's why I was making this video about the smear campaign in the first place. But then it occurred to me that nothing about the campaign was actually a smear. But anyway, what are you going to do?